Assalamualaikum and good morning, good evening for everybody. Thank you for being with us today. So we are going to present a paper for Iccomah 2023, and I am Siti Surani Osman from University Science Islam Malaysia, the main author for this paper. So I would like to also introduce our co-authors for this paper. The title of this paper is actually Methods of News Consumption Among University Students in Malaysia. And we have three other co-authors who are Liana Matnayan from UTAR, Aruna Devaraju from UTAR, and Kartini Kamarzaman from USIM. So I'm going to share my screen to show with you our finding. Okay, so I will go straight to the finding because this is the thing that I want to share. But if you want to have the whole access to this research, then you can read the ebook that we have also provided the full paper for this study as well. So basically for this study, the main thing that we are researching is on methods of news consumption among university students in Malaysia, and we focus basically on three universities which are USIM, University of Science Islam Malaysia, UTAR, and also Shaman University Malaysia, SMUM. So basically, a total of 88 students respond to the question we asked via Google form. And basically, why we choose these three universities mainly because of it's more of a convenience sampling. So I teach myself and Dr. Kartini. We both of us teach at USIM. Puan Yana and Puan Aruna both are teaching at UTAR, and I am also teaching as well at Shaman University Malaysia. So we have our students combined here, and should be able to give us some idea on what and how the news consumption looks like among our students in these three universities, and it's quite diverse as well in terms of the choice of universities. Fortunately, because USIM is a public university, while UTAR and Shaman University Malaysia are both private universities. So out of these 88 students, we got 65.9% female students, while the rest 34% is male students. We asked four close-ended questions and also one open-ended question on news consumption habit. Okay, so the first one we ask is actually, of course, how long students read news in a week. So it's interesting that majority of the students, of course, they admit that they read less than an hour a week, while only 0.04% of students read more than 3 hours of news a week. And then the main device they use to read news is, of course, the smartphone. 92% of out of the total agreed that they read news via the smartphone. And then how usually do you read news? For this question, you have to only take one, which is the main way they read news. So this question actually asks, we want to know basically whether these students, they read news like the entire news, or they just skim the news, or just scan through post, whatever that they see and pass their social media. So that's the main thing that we want to see. And from that, generally, majority of the students, 61.4% of the students agreed that basically they read news by skimming for important facts, while 36.4% scan through posts on social media, and 33% of the students admitted that they read the entire news. So I think this finding is quite interesting because it's still quite a lot if we can see the percentage of students who actually really read the entire news. So we hope that is accurate in terms of when they answer this, because it's an important thing that we know that news are being read from the beginning until the end. It's quite interesting as well to know that. But when we find the majority of the students basically skim for important facts, I think this is a habit that is not only happen because of people or students start reading via the digital way and through social media and everything. I think we have actually seen this uh, pattern of reading news since in the printed newspaper as well. And then what elements that hold the students' attention when reading a new story? Of course, majority of them say that majority means here is 60.2%, say they read when there is something interesting for them to read about, while 23.9% read news when they feel important. So this is where the important versus interesting thing comes in. So of course, interesting would go more, yeah, 60%. Important would go 23, 24%, while 12.5% read something relates to their home country. I think for the third one, it has been answered by our students from the Shaman University Malaysia, because there are a lot of international students from mainland China, and probably these are our international students who answer this question. Yeah. And then, what is the main news platform you usually use? It's 86.4% answered they get access to news via social media. And for the open-ended question, we also asked them, the students, 88 students, to summarize their news consumption habit. So we asked the general question, how do you describe your news consumption habit? And we received 59 responses for this. And we have categorized these answers into three categories. The first one is category one, which is news consumption is seen as positive, or they describe themselves as seeking for news. And then the second category is those who perceive themselves as having a low news consumption habit, and they perceive themselves as not really going into news, but they have to read, something like that. And number three is dependent. They depend much on social media to access news. So these are some of the answers. This one is very raw. We did not actually edit this answer. So these are directly from the form that we gathered from the students. So for category one, news consumption is seen as positive, and they were actually seeking for news. They admitted that reading news, one of the students said, is his or her daily task. And then they will try to catch up for every single news and share with others as well. And news keep them up to date and current news, and that is the main reason why they use the internet to read news. And also interesting news, and also news related to political is also something that the students seek for. And for category two, where they assume themselves as having low habit of news consumption or passively seeking for news, most of the reasons are basically they say that they are not so interested in reading news. Um, if there is nothing interesting to them, then they will just ignore it. And but they realize, interestingly, they realize that this is not good, because sometimes they might miss some important news. And some would describe and admitted that their news consumption habit is low, since they only read news for less than an hour a week, and also inconsistent. It's low and inconsistent. And for the rest, they admitted that sometimes it really depends on the what news are being published. If it's interesting, they will read it. If not, they will just ignore it. And also some of them admit that basically they don't really like reading, and if let's say it's interesting, then only they read news. So those who are basically describe themselves as having low news consumption habit. And the third category is dependency to social media to access news and read news. And of course, Facebook is one of the social media apps and also a platform that the students have access to news, and also they just read news from social media and did not read into details. Yeah, so this is directly related with our previous question just now, in terms of how they read news. So they just probably skim for important points. And then they scan through social media, like for example Instagram, but when they discover something interesting, then only they will read the whole thing about the news they see. And um, and I only read news on social media through news media accounts. So those are some of the findings that we get raw from the open-ended questions. So basically, from this reading, we can see that most respondents see themselves as low news consumers and do not actively seeking for news. Majority, yeah. If they read news, they skim and read only news they feel important. Most of them also admitted that they depend much on social media to have access and read news. Yes, so I think that's all for the presentation. So we hope that we're able to give you some insights based on these findings of research. But of course, for the full paper, you can find it in the ebook that we have also submitted for Iccomah 2023. Thank you so much. And hopefully the research is able to provide some important idea exploration and very new findings to are related to news consumption habit. Thank you. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera.